Hi, I'm Scooter Hendon of TexasBrews.org. I'm here with my good friend Brenden Stubblefield. Today we'll be talking about base malts, or malted barley. In particular, here you go, Stubby. Stubby, as we like to call him. Stubby's an avid home brewer. He also, as you can see from his t-shirt, is experienced at the Blue Bonnet Brew Off, which many people might know about. He actually earned a gold medal this year for his extra special bitter, so congratulations, Stubby.
Thank you.
Got a Stein, that's awesome. Stubby will also be opening a homebrew shop here in Fort Worth. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we're located at 5200 Airport Freeway, Texas Brewing Incorporated. You can come by, and you can also check us out on our website at texasbrewinginc.com.
Awesome, excellent. Well, just to, you brought some malts here today. We're gonna talk about malted barley being, I guess, probably the most important part in beer. You would say, maybe?
I would say so.
Yeah. Malted barley being a grain imparts basically kind of four different things, I guess, right? Aroma, flavor, color, and most importantly, provides fuel for yeast to eat. There's sugars, I guess, for yeast to eat to turn into alcohol, which makes beer so much fun.
That's right.
Today we'll talk about that and a little bit about the malting process of how exactly malt's created. We go over that a little bit.
Yeah. Basically, all the main beer component is barley, and what we do to the malt to make it actually utilizable for beer is we malt it. And the way that they do that is they take it and they get it wet and they start the germination process. And what that does is that starts the process of changing starches to sugars, and that allows gives it actually the fuel for the yeast. So there's two different really base malt two different types of barley. There's a 6-row and a 2-row. Your 6-row is typical. It's a high yielding malt that most of your Bud Miller and Coors use. It's a little more grainy flavor, and it's a little cheaper, and that's why that they use those particular malts. Your typical craft brews such as this use a 2-row. That's just your basic malt. As you can see here, it's very light in color, doesn't really impart a strong flavor, and we'll talk about some of the other things that some of your other malts do as well.
All right, so in particular, Pine Belt Pale Ale uses 2-row malt, or at least the can says so. Just the most confusing part is the can actually says it uses 2-row, and the website says it uses raw special pale. Now, pale malt and 2-row sort of not really too different, but they provide. You say
the main thing is color,
okay,
more than anything. Pale is a little darker than your 2-row typically.
Now you'd say pale is probably pretty similar in color. Now all three of them we have here really aren't that different, but it's a lighter color and not going to provide a ton of flavors.
Right.
But they're not going to look too different. Which here is we got 3 different malts, and you look at them, just on the camera, you can see them here. They just don't look that different, but they are.
Right. And the main difference between it's by the processes of actually kilning the malts is what changes the colors and the flavors, caramelizations of sugars, and different roasting. We'll go over that in a second episode about specialty grains, and a lot of these other ones actually have quite a bit of different colors. Whereas this is mainly the base malt. These are the biggest component of the beer.
You see, I was mentioning on that a little bit. There's really not. They're sort of in the same family, I guess. Barley and wheat,
right?
And basically, barley. I guess originally they used barley to brew beer because it didn't sort of gum up the works quite as much. Is that kind of how it goes?
Well, actually, the wheat is a lot more. It has a lot more proteins in it.
Okay.
So it actually is quite the opposite.
Oh, is it the opposite? Isn't it? See, I'm learning all kinds of new stuff from you. See.
Exactly. But there's many different other types of malts as well that we won't really get into. There's Maris Otter, which is a really popular English malt. Pilsner malt, which is the lightest malt that there is available, but there's just numerous more than we can cover in one episode.
Sure, absolutely. You should have a drink there, man.
Sounds good.
It's been a long day, man. We gotta have a drink, a little bit of a drink. So, as we were saying here, Pine Belt Pale Ale, it's great, and it's typically a hoppy beer, but you know, one of the things that people think about, like the first thing they think about with Pine Belt is hops. You know, it's very hoppy for a pale ale, but you know, the malts obviously are playing a big role there that a lot of people kind of don't necessarily think about.
Right. Well, typically your malts is what imparts your sweetness. It's beginning beer drinkers, I guess you would say, have a hard time distinguishing between the hops and the malt a lot of times, but your malt is actually what gives it the sweetness,
right?
Not necessarily the bitterness that comes with the hops, and we'll talk about those later as well.
Yeah, we'll have a later episode about hops, and we'll go into that a little bit more. So, great beer. So, we also have here Real Ale Oktoberfest, which uses Munich and Vienna malts, which are also two very popular base malts. Oktoberfest beers and Marzens in general are going to use one or the other, many times both. St. Arnold Oktoberfest uses Munich, but they use 3 different kinds of Munich. So, you know, that's one of the things. Why don't you talk a little bit about that, about how, you know, you can have one base malt, say Munich, but then there's all kinds of different kinds of Munich.
Right.
You know?
Actually, we're going to talk about first. We're talking about Vienna malt, and what that does is that contributes a little bit of a toasty, biscuity flavor to the beer. It also gives it a little orangish color component to the beer as well. It gives it a little color. This is typically used in your Marzens or your Oktoberfests. It's also used in a what the malt was actually made for to begin with was something called a Vienna Lager. One of the popular ones you can get around in Texas is Negro Modelo, and it's a fantastic example.
Great beer.
Also, too, we have a Munich. What that does is that actually imparts a little darker color. It's roasted a little more than what your Vienna is. It's also, it gives it a really malty sweetness to your beer. So that if you have your Oktoberfest, you really have a whole lot of malt profile in your beer. So
sure, yeah.
And that's where the Munich really comes into.
And that's one of the things that's great about Oktoberfest and Marzen beers is that you can really kind of pinpoint that flavor. You know, people when they drink it, they go, oh, you know, that's got a unique flavor to it. It's got you know, it's very distinctive flavor, and that comes typically from those German malts.
Right. So. And actually, one of the neat things about, you know, your Oktoberfest and if you're a beginner and learning the different components of beer, this is a perfect example. This doesn't have much hop profile at all, very little. Most of your German beers really feature the malt in the beer. So
yeah, Germany's not typically known as a country that features hops
at all.
Yeah,
yes.
and Germany in particular, you're just talking about malted barley, and here Germany in particular, sort of, they used to have a law that they actually had. It was a Reinheitsgebot, but where they actually by law were required to only have, it was originally I guess 3 things, and then it became 4.
Right. Once they discovered yeast.
Exactly. Once they discovered that it was you know, you could actually put yeast in it instead of just leaving it out like a lot of Belgians do. But we'll get into that when we talk about the yeast in a later episode too. So we got a lot to cover as far as ingredients go in beer. So, I believe that about wraps it up for base malts with us. Our next episode will be about specialty malts. So we'll be talking about more fun stuff, and I'll probably munch on a few more pieces of this stuff. And Stubby will be back. So go visit his homebrew shop. It's gonna be a good time. It's gonna be a little bit different. You know, you're going to be providing a few different things other than just beer ingredients.
Right, exactly. We're going to have a little more social aspect, make people feel at home. They come by, bring their beers, let me taste them.
Of course, absolutely. Well, excellent. Well, thanks for watching from TexasBrews.org, Scooter Hendon. Cheers.